Howdy, my name is James Willows, and from age 5, I was fishing, hunting, hiking, trapping in the wilderness areas around my home of Hungry Horse, Montana. I dismiss tales of Bigfoot as fanciful myths because in over 4,000 miles of hiking and hunting, I had never seen any evidence of such. Then, when I was 16 on an extended canoe trip, we had one of the scariest nights imaginable on a remote, mysterious island. For years, I filed through the Rolodex in my mind, trying to think of a species that could have produced the drama that we experienced that night, and I came up with nothing. So finally, I asked my hunting partner of many decades if he believed in Bigfoot. He said, yeah, we do, because my wife saw one, and though I wasn't looking in that direction, I immediately went to where it had crossed, and I saw very clear 18-inch long humanoid type prints. That made me think that this could be the greatest mystery on our planet. And it triggered my own curiosity to begin my private search to see if Bigfoot really did exist. I did an extended search in the Bluff Creek wilderness down by Willow Creek, where the Bigfoot stories first originated, and I met a native man who claimed to have seen one up by Tishtane Creek.
Yeah, we were just up there fishing, and he kept running through. We smelled the stink smell. Thought it was a wild bear or a hog with Bigfoot.
How tall was he?
10 feet, at least.
About 10 feet? 9, 10 feet?
9, 10 feet, I don't know.
Whoa!
It was good size, man. Shiny like mink. Real black and shiny.
Then I began interviewing people I met in my business, and friends and I would do the recon if it was a recent sighting. I own a store in Hungry Horse, Montana, which serves over 1,000 people a day on a busy summer day. And since I work up front as a cashier, I would often visit people when it wasn't too busy. In the course of doing this, I met people who said they had an actual sighting of Bigfoot.
Yeah, I was out driving with my brother. We farm in rural Nebraska there, and probably a quarter mile away. It was in January. We were driving around a section to see our neighbor's new home that he had built, and I said to my brother, "What's that up on that hill about a quarter mile away?" He said, "Well, I'd say it's Bigfoot." I said, "You know, I would too." 9 foot tall, approximately.
Wow.
Cute, big head, you know, normal shoulders, the hands below the knees. He was just going to the east.
I also have over 180 mountain men and mountain gals who are in the mountains almost 24/7 in the summer picking the wild huckleberry, and I asked them what their experiences were as well. So this is one of my huckleberry pickers named Dalton, and he had a Bigfoot story too. And these are the guys I really trust, and I trust their stories because they're woodsmen, they're out in the woods almost 24/7, and they know their stuff when it comes to animal life in the outdoors.
Well, we were all up Pinkham Creek up in Eureka. We were doing a logging job up there.
Peyton Creek?
Pinkham Creek, yes,
Pinkham,
sir.
okay.
Pinkham Creek up in Eureka, and we were doing a logging job up there.
He's a Eureka boy.
Yeah, we were doing a logging job up there, and it was probably, I don't know, 3:30, 4:30 in the afternoon. We were coming down from the landing, and we came around a corner, and something went across the road, man. And I mean, I'm telling you, there was 4 of us in a logging pickup, and a crew cab logging pickup, and we all 4 looked at it, and we know it was not a bear, we know it was not a wolf, we know that it was running on 2 legs, and when it got to the other side of the road, it jumped across the ditch and ran up that hill, and by the time we got down there, there was nothing to see.
I have about 180 pickers in the forest almost 24/7 picking huckleberries for me. And it's really kind of neat because I get to ask them about their Sasquatch stories. And Josh and Christine here, they just brought in some beautiful berries, $247 worth. And when I asked if they had a Sasquatch experience, they sure enough did.
We were in the woods. He was backing up. I was looking down at my phone, and when I looked up, Sasquatch walked between 2 trees, like 1 step, and looked me right in my eyeballs.
Right in your eyes.
And it scared the daylights out of me, so and it scared him, my reaction, and I would not get out of the woods.
The real pickers often just use 4-wheelers to get up there and do their deal.
Have a good day.
too.
Between talk with my customers and the huckleberry pickers, I have now interviewed 28 people who claim to have seen Bigfoot. Their testimony can be seen in my first two shows, Incredible Bigfoot Documentary 1 and 2. They seemed like credible people to me, ranging from truckers to insurance adjusters to Native American people. Here are a few samples of those testimonies. Hey, this is James Willows here with Charles Denorio. In my business here, I'm always talking to lots of customers, and one of my little curiosities has been lately if Bigfoot exists. And I've had some amazing stories from some of my customers. And Charles here had an incident where an animal that was vertical in nature crossed ahead of his truck. He looks like a trucker. Are you a trucker, Charles? Yeah.
Passed in front of my truck, but right outside of my headlights to illuminate it. But you could still see the silhouette of it. The way this thing ran across, it was on its 2 feet, but it looked like it was uncomfortable running. Like 3 or 4 strides, and it was gone. Yeah, I got goosebumps right away when I saw that.
So I was out looking for bear at Glacier National Park, and the road currently is closed about 12 miles in. I'm going to the Sun Road, and as we were pulled over on the side across Lake McDonald, there's a mountain, and I was looking out into the mountains where there's trees and everything. There's a clearing somewhere in the trees, and I saw something run across. I probably saw it for maybe 1 or 2 seconds, probably 3-4 steps at most, and it was running on 2 legs. It wasn't like a bear. I thought it was a bear because of the color.
Yeah.
It had like brown fur all over, and then I turned over to my sister who's in the passenger side, and I said, I think I just saw a bear. And I started thinking about it, and I ended up Googling, do bears run on 2 feet? And they don't. They can stand on 2 feet, but they don't. So then I started thinking, did I just see Bigfoot? But I don't believe in Bigfoot, so I wondered if there was a trail up there or something that people run on, because there's trails all over the park.
Yeah.
But the odd thing would be, are they running like a full suit? Like it's all fuzzy and brown, and it's just crazy because I'm pretty sure I saw it. My binoculars, they have 20 times zoom, so I saw it really clear. It was a creature. It was tall, probably about 6 to 7 feet tall, which made me think it was a human at first.
Yeah.
But the
Because
color of
it didn't give the appearance of being ginormous, like bigger than a big man, or did it?
yeah, like a very, probably like tall as a basketball player. I'd say like, you know, Shaq size. Like people can be that tall, but not average. It's not like average height.
Isn't that something?
Yeah,
Shaq size, that's something. And she was saying that it's,
just like this.
how long ago was this?
This was maybe an hour ago.
Oh, just an hour ago. So what's going through your mind? You know, you said you didn't believe in Bigfoot.
I didn't believe in it, and now I'm swearing up and down that I saw Bigfoot.
Get across the street.
Diane. And when I was very young, I would say probably about 9 or 10, we were in Mount Shasta at a rest stop. And then we were just looking up on the hillside because it looked kind of bare. And we seen a stump. And then we seen something very dark we thought was a bear. And then all of a sudden it stood up and then started waving at us. Then a busload of tourists came and they were trying to get their cameras out. And as soon as that happened, it just dashed up the hill, the Bigfoot.
Wow.
And we didn't see it
and
again.
And it covered a lot of territory.
It had to be at least 80 feet, and I would say within seconds it was up there because it had a big stride and going up a steep incline.
And how big do you reckon it might have been?
I would say it's probably about 8 feet but the shoulders were broad. So that's why I thought it was a bear.
Yeah.
But a bear wouldn't wave at you and stand up.
Did it wave almost like a person?
Yes, it waved like a human.
That's something. The Bigfoot waved at you.
Oh, absolutely.
Did you wave back?
Well, I was trying to, and then all of a sudden a busload of tourists came, and they were kind of like all excited, and it just dashed up.
Now, where is Mount Shasta?
It's in California.
Northern?
Yeah, north.
In all of my research, the two most convincing video clips I've ever seen are number one, the famous Patterson-Gimlin footage. And in 2020, the Washington Department of Transportation claimed they had a very clear Bigfoot sighting walking through their gravel pit near Snoqualmie Pass. I think it's stunning footage that is very, very realistic. The next most convincing evidence I have ever seen was presented to me by a lady that I interviewed, and she said she would only allow me to make this public because she likes the way I handle this issue. And what it is a close-up facial photograph of Sasquatch. I know this lady does not have the means to have an expensive artist CGI crew from Hollywood create and make up this photograph. So I really believe it is authentic, and I believe it substantiates the hypothesis that what we could be looking at here are Neanderthals that never went extinct. But the aspect of her testimony that blew my mind is that she claimed that the Sasquatch she took this photo of was interdimensional, in that it can appear in the dimension that we perceive as real through our six senses, but it can seamlessly transmute into another dimension where it is not visible or perceivable to our senses. Now, I had heard wild ideas about this concept, but had never given them any credence. But when this gal produced a photo that substantiated her story of such, it floored and astonished me. Wouldn't it be fascinating and explain some things if some Sasquatch could transform in and out of our dimension? We will see more of this revolutionary photo and hear from the gal who took it, who has had more than one Sasquatch encounter later in the show. First, however, there is an area on the Blackfeet reservation that became famous for Sasquatch sighting when a guy named Bruce Schulte in Kiowa Camp Looking Glass area found 39 or 40 prints going through the backside of his ranch. Even the National Sasquatch Organization came and said they felt this was very credible evidence. It also appeared in the Cutbank and in the Browning newspaper. Well, in that same area, this native gal here gave me this testimony of seeing a whole family of Sasquatch in that area. And then we did the recon. That will be our first testimony. Then we will see many other equally engaging testimonies. Montana, by the way, according to some studies, is the 5th most active Bigfoot hotspot, behind places like California, Washington, and Idaho. I know we have a different vibe from the regular Bigfoot show where they've got spooky music and CGI Bigfoot recreations and hillbillies out with big eyes looking at where Bigfoot was supposedly seen. But for me, this isn't entertainment. It's an investigation into what I believe is planet Earth's biggest mystery, and I'm conducting it in kind of an empirical, rational type way. So I hope you enjoy the show.
This is Linda, and she had a sighting of a Bigfoot in an area. She didn't even know it, but there's been a fairly well-known sighting in the Kiowa Camp region over around the reservation around Browning. And she didn't even know there was such a sighting, but she had a sighting there also. And that's what I'm finding. Wherever there's a real sighting, there'll be other real sightings to confirm that.
Yeah, it was probably end of the summer they call it Kiowa, and I'm going up towards Looking Glass, and on the east side going that way up towards Looking Glass, and it was like early in the morning taking a ride, taking pictures, but I'm driving and I have 2 other ones with me, and they're looking through binoculars and they're like, pull over, and we finally get to the top, and I get to look, and all I seen was from the top chest up must have been the male, the dad or whatever, going over the ridge. And then I'm looking again, and by this old tree there's a little one playing, and then all of a sudden, it must have been the mom or something, she moved, and they both went over the ridge together. And wow. It's like, oh, this
you got to see the mom too?
Yeah, well, I thought it was a tree.
Wow.
And she's just still as could be, slender, but the little one was probably about this big.
Oh, only that big?
Yeah, and it was playing on that little dead tree. But yeah, it was just, then we start going up, further up to the top, and then you start dropping down, but we couldn't see anything after that, but it was something.
So what color did they appear to be?
Kind of a darkish brownish.
Darkish brownish.
Yeah, they kind of blended in because it was fall.
Ah, was it last fall?
Yeah, it was
Wow.
just this last fall.
And how big did the male seem to be?
Oh gosh, he had to be at least 9 feet. He was big.
About 9
Yeah.
feet. And was the female a little small?
Yeah, really petite, small.
Oh, a
It was
pretty
just-
little petite
And then
one.
the little one was just, I thought it was just part of like a tree stump or something on the edge of a tree till it starts. And then they went on over the ridge.
Well, Linda, like I was telling you, there was a well-known, well-documented sighting over there around a place called Kiowa Camp. Now, when you first told me the story, you mentioned something about Kiowa.
Yeah.
Well, is it out near Kiowa?
It's well, we call it Looking Glass. We could enter that way, and then you come down by Red Eagle, by East Glacier area that way.
Yeah.
But Kiowa is going towards St. Mary's campgrounds and stuff, which I did hear stories back in the day. But like I said, I've been living in Billings, but I came home to take care of my mom, bless her soul. But she did believe me.
Isn't that something?
Yes. But
So
my camera
what
didn't
actual
work.
road were you on then? Is that really curvy one that goes out there?
Okay, you enter Browning, you know, the casino there, and you're heading just straight west. You just follow it straight.
And it's
west.
really curvy.
Not, they took it all out now.
Oh, they did?
It take you about 10 minutes tops to get to starting to go up towards St. Mary's, and they're redoing that whole road too.
Wow, and you were actually on that road?
Yes.
Oh, that is so awesome.
And then they used to have, where they used to have KFC and stuff back in the day, you turn there and then you go up Looking Glass where it's windy and stuff.
Yeah.
But you only could pull over so far, but as you're going, it's where we pulled over in that ridge right on top on the left-hand side. It's where we seen them.
Now, I asked her if she got any footage, and what'd you tell me?
No, my phone died.
Isn't that something? Well, thank you. That's an amazing story.
Yeah, I didn't tell too many because I thought, well, and I told my daughter out in the car, I gotta stop and see.
That's something, because, yeah, some people are kind of quiet about it, because some people, but she came in looking for a Bigfoot hat. She says, I believe I want a Bigfoot hat.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Linda.
Thank you. And you wind down, and then they call it the roundabout, that you got to go around and either turn, and then you head west.
It's so
I've
winding,
seen
man.
like 7 moose last week
Did you on that same
on
road?
that road.
Isn't that
Yeah,
something?
they're huge. You can't miss it, and then you just keep going, follow it all the way out, and it's called the KOA. And you'll see turn. It say Looking Glass East Glacier. Turn that way. It's not open yet. They're still plowing it.
Oh, and was that the road that you're
Yes.
on, where you turn and you go
Yeah,
toward
you
Looking
take a
Glass
left.
East Glacier?
Yeah.
I think as soon as it's open, I'm going to go up in there. There's even something on YouTube about actual footage of a Bigfoot in the distance by St. Mary's Lake.
Okay, I heard
And,
that one. And
I
then-
didn't know if it was very legitimate, but now that I'm hearing all these sightings in that general area, it
Yeah.
very well could be.
And I'll look on my mom's phone, which my dad has. Well, she showed me it. These 2 girls were coming down from Looking Glass, not even paying attention, just using one of her brand new phones, and they got home, zoomed in, and there's no way a pickup, nothing could go out there, and you could see him strutting across that field by close to the mountains.
Oh
Rocky
my
Mountains.
gosh, really?
Yes. And I'll
Wow.
have to see if it's on my mom's phone. I'm pretty
Yeah,
sure
see if it is, and
Yeah.
text it to me or something.
Yeah, you can.
Well, we're headed out to Blackfeet country in a Bigfoot quest.
Jeremy said, yeah, one of those where not everyone survives.
And this is a pretty beautiful road, and I love this mountain right here. It's Mount St. Nicholas that is just pretty insane. My climbing partner actually forded this river and did the cross-country trek and climbed that baby. There's been a lot of really credible sightings over here on the Blackfeet Nation, so we are going to check one out. Well, here we're coming into Browning, Montana, and up here there'll be a roundabout that heads us out in the direction we need to go.
Well, here's the map that Linda Crawford gave me.
We're looking for an old abandoned KOA. I guess it's this way. Okay, I zeroed out my odometer, and I think we go about 15 miles. Ronnie has the distinction of being one of the windiest places on earth. There have been freight trains that have been blown right over, many of them in this city. Mary and I were driving along here once, and a camper trailer RV in front of us got blown right over.
Yeah, we had to find 3 blocks there and we carried it back to the truck, like dug out in front of the thing and then like stuck made like a wrap.
Jeremy says seems like bear country too. That's why I got a little secret surprise in my knapsack. Well, we see our first wildlife here. Some rather hungry looking moose over here. Boy, that moose is just skin and bones, huh? It's been a hard winter, you can tell that for sure.
It's like a long winter.
It's been a long, hard winter, you can tell that from looking at this moose. It's probably a 900-pound animal that looks like it's down to about 350. Those animals really barely survived the winter. That's some pretty intense weight loss. The grizzly bear will be plenty hungry too, Jeremy. He says, I don't know if I want to know that. The amazing thing was that the bear that I almost ran into, it was in good shape. There was no ribs showing. It was a good, strong-looking, well-fed bear. I guess there's plenty of tourists up there at Glacier Park, though. Well, what do we got here? Can anybody see what that sign says? Kiowa? Kiowa Mercantile. Some interesting shale right off here. And this looks pretty abandoned-ish.
I think it's definitely an abandoned campground.
Well, I would imagine this is probably what they're talking about. It's definitely an abandoned campground. It doesn't say KOA, but it says Kiowa. Oh, is there abandoned swimming pool?
Yeah, back in the trees there.
Well, this is definitely the kind of boondocksville place that would be good squatching and pretty remote place for a Sasquatch to hide out. Most people I've interviewed have seen these creatures through binoculars because they're pretty wary. You got pretty good hair for a Bigfoot right now.
It's a cool look out though.
I really like the looks of that area right there for any game, don't you guys? It's a nice, well-watered valley.
Pretty dense.
It is pretty dense, but where would you hide if you were a creature that really didn't want to be seen by anybody?
Probably in an area like that.
Yeah.
Is that about the same area that the lady said the Bigfoot was at?
You know, we'll all listen to the video again and see if we can get any more clues about it, specifically where it was. But first, let's check out this abandoned place. This might be Bigfoot Central right here. There's a spiral staircase. This is the kind of place you guys like to play music videos, huh?
Oh yeah, the like that abandoned CIA listening base with the towers and domes in it in Berlin was like probably the coolest abandoned place they ever played.
Cool. Wow, speaking of music videos, this is cool. Look at that. Graffiti and everything.
That's some cool.
Oh man.
This is where all the local teenagers come to party, I guess. Follows our soul.
I bet this is kind of a party spot.
This is ours. Don't go.
Don't go looking. That's a pretty cool piece. My hideout. Jeremy's spied out the swimming pool. Gonna take a dip. Wow, it's a pretty big, nice pool. Let's see if Squatchy's in here. I'm pretty sure this would be the only abandoned campground around. And she said it was about 10 minutes away from the roundabout, which is about right. This whole area looks like pretty prime grizz country to me. That would be it. What I heard her say is they were headed toward Looking Glass, up toward the top before it dropped down, and the ridge on the left.
I said you could hide an army underneath those trees. Pretty dense cover.
It's dense cover, isn't it? Great hiding spot.
Let me tell you of this feeling, words just can't explain. She's a sterling silver lady with gold dust in her veins. She's gentle like a baby, she's wild like desire. She's a lady called Montana, Lord, she's ice and then she's fire. From the plains of the Powder River to the mountains of Columbia Falls, it would take you 15 lifetimes to ever see it.
At the time she gave her testimony 3 weeks ago, she said this area was not open yet, but that it would soon open. So I think we timed it about right.
She's a lady called Montana, brings a teardrop to my eye.
That's rugged country, and if that Bigfoot video is true of the St. Mary's Bigfoot, that would just be going over that hill to get to the St. Mary's upper basin where that video was taken.
I got my next single on cover.
Yeah. Well, not a bad view site to pick for a home. Squatchy. She spoke of it being on the left and disappearing over a ridge. This is a ridge to the left, and spoke of the little one in an old tree. I'm trying to decide where to do our romp. It seems to me in the fall, when it's a little bit drier, the animals would be up higher, even possibly on that ridge right behind us. But this time of year where it's just melting and opening up, I would think they would be lower. These are the shoes from the original Bigfoot show, and you may have seen where I jumped off one of those logs that I was walking down and snagged my shoe on something and it tore it open right there. I'm used to using E-Trex in the backcountry, so I marked a waypoint here. The ridge that she explained that it would have dropped over is up there about 2 miles. We're at 5,800 feet, and we're feeling that the animals would be drawn to the southerly exposure this time of year. So we're gonna head up here a little ways and see what we find. Well, we're pretty much at the top of the top. Figuring we'll just go back in here in the direction that she said she saw it drop over. Some kind of road here we're on. There's some kind of shrews or something here that have been working this outside. Some kind of black thing up there that is alive. Well, I'm curious enough to find out, to ascertain what it is. This one is challenging. I've never seen something quite like this in the wild. What do y'all think it is? Well, at least we know there's some kind of critter up here. It was not a turkey. It was not a ruffed grouse. Yeah, it was a big tail fan, but it definitely was not a turkey. Ah, so the road does switch back up to here. Well, the same road we initially started switched switched back and we caught it after chasing that fowl up here. Well, this is some kind of a lookout anyway. Pretty sweet lookout. Honk if you're horny. Maybe there's some parking going on up here. Frankie Gardapi, you know, I have a Blackfeet friend named Michael Gardapi. I'm going to ask him if that's his relative. What is this thing anyway? I bet it was a fire lookout. Kind of the top of some kind of a mountain plateau or butte or something. Jeremy's going to walk the other side. Could be cattle or horse. Don't anticipate really seeing anything up here. So I'll see if I can find Jeremy and maybe we'll cut down over the ridge. I gotta just come. There's the road from whence we came up. And here would have been basically the ridge that she said she saw something on. Jeremy found a watering hole right down there below my head. The wind is in our face and this should be a good area to check out.
Too many of the YouTube stuff, but
yeah, it's interesting to read those Old Testament accounts, and the descendants of Rapha were mentioned in particular of being ginormous. Some of them were even mentioned to have 6 toes and 6 fingers, 24 in all.
oh yeah, that's showed up in medical stuff.
Has
like,
it?
Extra digits or digits. Well, yeah, because like a Viking or like Shack would seem like a Bigfoot to like a...
Alexandra Mesa, that's said to have seen one in Glacier Park when it first opened after COVID, said he was about the size of Shaq O'Neal. There's some tracks down there we're going to go check out. Certainly has the appearance of some kind of track. Something passed this way, wouldn't you reckon? It's a pretty dang big tracks of some kind.
Like these shapes there, like that's like a foot shape.
You thought 2 of them looked like a right foot? Here we go with something very definite, guys. Here is a very definite set of tracks, but what kind? If they were a genuine track, it was a track of something that had kind of a big pad. Almost, it looked to me like an elephant, but they would have sunk in further. Kind of a roundish thing, huh? I found a broken tree.
That's either a moose or like a huge humanoid breaking it dramatically.
That is an interesting break of a tree, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's got to be 8 foot tall, and there's no other broken trees around here.
Oh,
interesting, Josiah. It's way too flat for an avalanche.
There's no debris either. It's just one random broken tree. It doesn't look like lightning either.
One random broken tree. Interesting. It's broke at about 7 feet. Maybe we better continue up here and see what else we find. There's no human that would be tall enough to break that tree. And there's no other broken trees around here that would indicate a windstorm. Interesting, Josiah. Good find. We're definitely in the middle of nowhere where there's not going to be any people coming in here trying to break a tree. Yeah, something broke that tree. But why?
A moose rubbing maybe? I feel like it's more friction marks though if it was a moose.
Right. It was just snapped.
Yeah, I was just sure it snapped.
Now here's an area where you've got a strong wind prevailing in our face, and you can see the trees have been definitely shaped by that. If I'm a critter the size of a Sasquatch, there's not enough feed up here for me to be up around here this time of year. Certainly the time that she spotted the family, there would have been. But I'm inclined to head down now, possibly even to check out that watering hole.
Big elk.
Elk track. This has the same look of those tracks we saw, kind of a maybe a 2-week-old look. Well, here's our fire lookout, makeout point. Imagine being a Browning teenager and coming up here to park. And there you can almost see Browning itself down that way. Well, those tracks definitely had an element of mystery to them, huh?
Combined it with a tree, then it's weird. Then it's like, it didn't look like moose tracks. There also weren't any signs of abrasion on the tree, or anything that snapped around it, or scorch marks.
Yeah. Just a broken tree in an area where there would be no wind cause, because it's just too protected.
It was green too.
Yeah, it was pretty green too. That means it happened relatively recently. Yeah, you're right. It was a very clean break, with no signs of abrasion or any normal thing that would break it.
Yeah.
There's that area that was so thick that we first were going to take a foray into that you couldn't really see 20 feet in front of you. That's that pillar you saw, huh, Josiah?
Yeah.
It's really pretty cool, isn't it, the way that it survived the way that it did. Now look at this, you guys. Do any of these tracks bear any resemblance to what we saw up there? They're kind of big, roundish looking tracks. And this one, look at this. It's got great big old claw marks going in.
It's there too.
Look at that.
Like a huge Blackfoot.
That is one big grizzly bear is what that is. Mm-hmm. Don't you think?
Yeah, I would agree, actually.
You know, I thought I saw some of those same things going in up there. And wow, that's actually very similar to the tracks that we found up there.
Yeah, and then see how up here where they're different. It's kind of the same raised.
Yeah, where they're different, because at the time that it went through, some of this was slightly thawed and some of it wasn't. Isn't that something? Wow. But you know, on one of those up there, I thought I saw this same impaling of the claws that you can clearly see on a couple of these.
Yeah.
I'm glad we didn't run into that bad boy.
Yeah.
Well, there's one that you can also really clearly see the claws going in. I would guess that this would have to be a grizzly bear that would have been in the 600-700 pound class, which is a big grizz for the park. Exactly. Look at the size of that grizzly bear track. Wow. And our theory was correct that it was at a time when some of this was more impressionable and some of this was not. It looked to me, Josiah, that bear track could have been as much as 7.5, maybe even 8 inches wide. What do you think? Huh?
It looked like a huge gorilla with claws.
Obviously, I didn't get a close look at the grizzly's tracks or paws, but if I had to just throw something out off the top of my head, that one I about ran into, I'd say its feet might have been 5.5 inches wide. So a 7 or 7.5 inch wide grizzly bear. Whoa.
That's a huge.
Jeremy finds where it probably went off into the woods.
Yeah, look at the size of that.
Like he says, though, it is hard to tell because of the age. Here you can see it padding off. This was an area where the snow was more frozen and it just padded easily across here. Now from the look of these pads, it was probably more in the 6-inch range. I don't know if that's the same animal though, because that other one had some ginormous claws that was trenching into the snow, and I don't see that evidence here. Yeah, they look smaller to me too.
Well, we've really hit the promised land. As you can see, that's a very bumpsome looking beaver dam. I found an elk head. We decided that the fishing in that beaver dam was like the entire beaver dam. A lot of fishing in my day, but I don't remember ever finding such a beautiful beaver dam as this. Yeah, I think I saw a trout swimming and creating a wake.
I believe you, they'd all be in here. I was about to stop rolling too.
Well, I'm here with Leilani Upham from the Begunny Bigfoot Storytelling Project in Browning. And since we are both researchers in the same area, we tend to corroborate a little bit and get some of the same reports and the same hot spots. And one of the real hot spots, as this Blackfeet just told you guys about seeing the family, is that Kiowa Looking Glass area. So maybe she can say a little bit about what she's heard about that area.
Yeah, so that particular area on the Blackfeet Reservation is known as a hot spot there. We have heard, Carrie Lynn and I have heard so many stories and accounts and stories that even folks that are not willing to get on camera, but they come to us and they tell us. Many of the actual stories on our channel have came from that area, even though we don't talk about like that's the Kiowa area where it's at. It's been really a hot spot for as long as we know. As long as we've been growing up there and hearing about it. So
Sweet. Now who's this gal that you're here with today?
this is my mother, Sue.
Is that your mother? Wow, God bless you, Sue. I showed Leilani the clip that I just showed you guys of the native gal that saw the whole family. And we both noticed that this was basically the same time frame that her friend or acquaintance also had a sighting in that same Looking Glass area. What was that, July?
Yeah, it was July of 2021, I believe.
Yeah.
Because it was shortly after that, Carrie Lynn and I took off. So once you see the story, we took up on that ridge and just kind of figured out that location of where it could be. We took a lot of B-roll footage of it and kind of tried to figure out where it was. And sure enough, we found out definitely it came across that highway and headed up that ridge. So
Well, when you see my show, you'll be able to see the area that we did our recon in and see if it may be the same area. There's kind of a Blackfeet makeout spot up there. It's sort of a tower on the top of that area that was an old fire lookout up there. And now it's kind of a place where the tribe goes up there to kind of park and make out.
Not me.
Not you. What is that? An old fire lookout?
I think so.
You'll see in my show that we encountered the tracks of a ginormous bear. It had the tracks the size of an elephant. Yeah.
Really?
With claws as longer than my finger.
What?
Yeah.
Where, when?
Around that same area. When we did the recon last May.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I would love to see a photo or a video of that.
It's crazy. We thought it was elephant tracks at first. It's so big.
Oh, wow. I didn't know. Silvertip grizzly?
Yeah,
The
silvertip
blonde
grizzlies.
ones? The big blonde ones? We
Yeah.
actually seen one, I think it was the summer of 2020. We were hiking up in that area along Looking Glass and kind of down in the valley. When we were done with the hike, we came around on the highway and we pulled over, and Carrie Lynn noticed it down there. It was huge. I've never seen a grizzly. I've never even seen a blondish grizzly.
Wow.
Very, very rare.
But it was a giant blondish grizzly, huh?
I bet that's
in
what
that
it was.
same area?
Mm-hmm. Yep,
Wow.
same area. We were just amazed. We watched it. We just it was at a distance too, like a really far distance, and we were still kind of horrified at its size.
Yeah.
It was just rolling around. It was huge, like the 3 times as big as a grizzly it seemed. I don't know.
Wow.
It was really, really big.
Well, that would definitely correlate to the size of this one because the foot was like 3 times the size of a regular grizzly. Where exactly in relation to that ridge and that hilltop was it that you saw the great big blonde grizzly bear?
So if you're coming up Looking Glass from the old Kiowa camp and you're starting to circle around and get closer to the top, there's a couple pull-offs. So I don't remember what pull-off it is, but it's one of the kind of the major pull-offs that looks like, you could just see the whole ravine and the backdrop of the prairie. So it's right there, and if you look down into this green grassy area with the ridge behind it, a lot of cows. They do graze a lot of cows down there.
Yes.
So if you look down in that little grassy area, that's where we seen it.
Well, that wasn't far at all from where we saw the tracks.
It didn't sound like a cow, but there was only a few of us because it was really, really faint, right? And so I did notice a few of us kind of look at each other. There wasn't too many, but we just kind of looked at each other many of our group didn't hear it, but it was kind of like
a faint sound that sounded like what?
Like a holler, kind of.
This is Don Lawrence. We've been fellowshipping with them down at the Native American Powerhouse Convention, and she's going to tell us about when she saw the Bigfoot.
We saw Bigfoot there were 2 of them. We were out hunting. My husband he's a fisherman, and he was over there in Alaska fishing at the point. So I had to be mom and dad, and my son was probably about, I'd say 8 years old, 10 years old. And I had to bring him hunting. So we went up to this one road. It was a logging truck, dirt road. And I had my nephew with me. His name is Pete. And we ended up going up there with a little tiny, little shotgun, I guess, that you can shoot birds with. But anyway, we went up there and we were all talking, having a good old time, and pretty soon we went up this hill and we went around a corner. Just as I turned the corner, there was a Sasquatch. He was standing up, there was one standing up, and he was probably about this tall, I'm saying. And then the other one was in a 3-point stance, like a football player.
Yeah.
Right in front of the one standing up. So we saw 2 of them. And this, so anyway, we could not believe our eyes. I mean, I was in such shock. I ended up just putting it in reverse, and we went down this long, big hill, and we went in reverse until I could finally find a turnaround. And my nephew, he was probably about 15 at the time.
Yeah.
And he said, Auntie, let's go back and look. And I said, no way, I'm not going back.
Did he see it too?
He said that it was running after our truck.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, as we were backing up, he said he saw them running after the truck, trying to catch up with us. But it was like, it was hairy.
What color?
I would say it was like a mossy brown. And they do have the long hair like the one you have out here, but the facial was more human-like, is what I say.
Huh?
Yeah, it wasn't like, you could still see the long hair, but you could tell that he had, kind of like human facial
Was there
structure.
any coloration in his eyes?
I don't really think so. No, there was
really
just they were
that.
probably just our height. I mean, most people think that they're really tall, but these ones were not tall.
How would he compare in stature to your husband? He's quite a large man.
Yeah, I would say that he was. They were tall, is all I can say, and large shoulders. And their bodies were quite, just kind of muscular, I guess, toward the legs. Yeah, tall.
How much taller than him?
Oh, I would say about this much taller, because they were standing in, right there probably.
Okay, about 6'6".
Yeah.
But he probably weighs 250, and you'd reckon they might weigh...
Probably about I'd say about 220.
Oh, really? They
They were
weren't...
big.
They were big, but they weren't that big. They weren't like ginormous.
Right. Yeah, that's what I thought. It had a body of, like, say, a football player's, I would say.
Oh, yeah, pretty carved statuesque.
And they say that they're smelly, but I didn't smell anything.
You didn't smell anything, but you were in a car.
We were in our truck. Yeah, and we were in such shock that I ran to our store. It's called a Law and Order place, for police station. I said, there's something going on up there. You need to send someone up to investigate, because man, it was quite scary.
So you went to the police and everything about it.
Mm-hmm.
Did they take you seriously?
I don't think they did.
Interesting. Yeah. Wow, that's something. But was the chest kind of not as hairy as the rest of them, or did it seem hairy all over?
All over, yeah.
All
it
over,
was
hairy all over.
And yeah, they blend right in like with the forest. They're kind of like, that's why I say it was like mossy color.
Wow,
because
isn't that something?
you'd have to really look hard. They can really disguise themselves.
Now, your husband was saying that y'all live in the very northwesternmost section of all of the United States.
Washington is kind of like that, right? Like Washington State. Well, we're right up here at the tip.
What's it called?
Nia Bay, Washington.
Nia Bay. And was it there near Nia Bay that you saw?
It was on. So, like, we're on a reservation. And so we're on, like, I think 3,500 acres.
What's the name of that reservation?
Macaw. Makah.
Is there a big lake on it that's famous for Bigfoot?
No.
No? No. Because the thing that first made me a believer in Bigfoot is I was talking to a native gal from Washington, and I said, you're from Bigfoot country. Did you ever have an encounter? And she said, did I ever? Me and Mom was picking up the kids on a kind of a route, and we were by the lake in our reservation that's well known for Bigfoot, and a great big one crossed the county road in 2 strides, and it went up on the hill and watched us a little, and it was like 9 feet tall, and we were pretty much terrorized. Find yourself pretty scared because it was so freaky?
Yes, I did. Yeah,
wow.
There was nothing like it in this world to see 2 of them.
So, were they about the same size?
I couldn't tell the stature of the one down because I got out of there in such a hurry. I didn't even see the second one get up.
Wow. And was this right near y'all's home there in Nia Bay?
Well, probably about 2 miles from where I lived.
Yeah, 2 or 3 miles.
Only 2 miles, but you've never seen a trace of them.
I've never seen them, no. Wow. My uncle's seen them.
Yeah.
Yeah, he actually, because we can river fish up there, they call it. And they can use nets, and it's about 9 or 10 feet deep.
Wow.
And he's seen one in the river, and he said the water only come up to probably chest high on him.
Yeah.
But he was out there pulling fish out of his net.
He was.
He got so scared that, you know, and this guy, he was a World War II veteran, but it just scared him so bad that him and his partner and his dogs went under the house and didn't come out for the rest of the night.
The rest of the night. Oh my gosh.
Pretty scary stuff.
So much. I really appreciate you sharing your
We'll
story.
probably see you again next year maybe, or maybe if you make it up our way, look us up.
I will. What did the people that you were with have to say about the incident? Who were you with, by the way?
Well, I was with my son. I have 3 sons. Anthony Lawrence, he's my youngest son. He wanted to go back up there and try to get it, you know, because a young boy, you know.
What do you mean try to get it?
Try to catch him.
Try to catch him or
he
shoot
said,
him?
Mom, let's go back up. We can shoot him or catch him or something.
Oh.
And then my nephew, which is 16, Pete Heiss, he ended up saying, you know, that he wanted to go back as well. And I didn't have it in my heart to try to go back up there to
Isn't
see
that
what it
something?
actually was, you know. And I don't know.
Well, I'm here with Tabitha and Kathleen. And you know, I myself never actually had a Bigfoot sighting, but I was on a very remote island and some big rocks were chucked into the inlet next to us to scare us away. It was in the middle of the night, but I'm pretty sure I know who and what it was. But there are times when some of my customers tell me that they actually saw Bigfoot, and that's the case here with Tabitha and Kathleen. So go ahead and share with us what took place.
Yeah, so I was with my mom driving, and we were on our way back from Canada. And at the time, we lived in Missoula, and so we hit Glacier, and not even about 15 miles into Glacier, I was looking, you know, at the mountains, sightseeing, you know, we were both quiet. She was driving, and I was looking at the mountains, and all of a sudden I see this huge man figure just walking down the mountain, just like it was no problem. And his arms were like this.
Yeah.
And when I seen him, my whole body jumped, like,
wow.
And it caught my mom's attention.
Yeah, it scared me.
And she was like, what, you know, like asking me what happened. And at first I couldn't speak, you know.
Yeah.
And I told her, I don't know, I seen something, and I explained it to her. And I told her, I promise you it was Bigfoot.
Wow.
Because right when I looked again, he was gone.
So exactly where were you at?
We were coming this way actually. So if we're here in this location, back towards, if we're heading right into going to the sun and right into the West Glacier, into the mountains right there, probably about 15 minutes or 15 miles from that entry into the mountains. So
15 miles. If you know, as you go from here, you go past west entrance into Glacier Park.
Yeah.
Do you keep going on 2, or you actually went into the park?
Keep going on 2.
On 2,
Yeah.
okay.
Mm-hmm.
About 15 miles past where like that turn to the park is. Wow, that's pretty thick in there, except by the river, the Nyack Flats there.
Yeah, and then there's like one way where you could see the mountain clearly, and that's where I see him walking down.
Oh, was that where the elk winter on the other side?
Yes.
Wow,
Yeah.
and you saw him walking right down there.
Just like no problem.
Just a cruising right down.
Yeah, just cruising right down.
And did you have binoculars, or
No,
was it just the naked eye?
It was just the naked eye.
So it was obviously big to be able to see him with the naked eye.
And then no man, no anything could walk down that mountain with no problem.
How big would you estimate?
I would say, 2 times bigger than you. He was big.
2 times bigger than me, and I'm 6 feet.
Yeah,
so
he was big.
He was a giant.
He was so big to where, I was far away from the mountain, and I could still see him clear.
Wow.
Yeah.
So were you scrambling at all for your phone or anything?
No, I was so shocked Like it was to the point where when I seen, I couldn't think, I couldn't even speak. She was in a shock. So I was driving, like she was saying, we were both kind of quiet, you know. And then I seen her in the corner of my eye. Her whole body just jumped, like her arms went out, like even her legs went out. Like she had like that, like a full body shock. And that's why I was like, oh my God, what? And she scared me, like she really scared me because but her whole face was just like pale, like the color just drained out of her. And I was not expecting it. And I was like, what's
Are y'all Blackfeet?
Yes. Yeah.
Wow. You know, on this same program, we have a Blackfeet gal that saw Bigfoot and another female Sasquatch and a baby. And if you know where the old Kiowa camp is on that area, it's kind of abandoned now.
Yeah.
That's where she saw them very clearly.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, we did a recon after we heard, because I take these things seriously. We did a recon, and my son found a rather peculiar 7 feet up in a low place where there's no wind. There was a branch just broken in half. Like an elk wouldn't do that. They'd rub it and maybe they could break one, a moose could, but there'd be a lot of, it was just snapped so perfectly. Not a big deal, but it was a curious sign.
Yeah.
And we also saw this ginormous bear track that had to be one of the biggest bears that's ever lived.
Wow.
In the winter. We did the last spring.
Yeah.
Well, that's something. What color?
Just black.
Just black.
Yeah. All
From the
I see
arms down to the knees? Or?
Yeah, I mean, his arms were moving, like, you know, he was going, and it was such a fast sight, but I could see, you know, and when I looked again, I couldn't see anything.
Wow. Friend Jimmy Grant and I hiked clear to the top of that same mountain. It took us probably 3 or 4 hours to get to the top of it, and it's rough country, not something that you can just come down with ease, as they describe the Bigfoot doing. There was a Bible story of a girl named Tabitha that actually died, and Peter spoke and raised her from the dead. So did you have to kind of massage her?
I was just like, oh my gosh, because I felt her energy. It scared the crap out of me. And then when she finally told me, I told her, no, I believe you. Because I believe in her.
Now, what time of year was it?
It was 2017, because my daughter, she was just a baby still, so.
Wow. What time of year?
Summertime. It was about July.
Was it July, huh?
No, we went August, because it was in the powwow.
Okay, that's,
August.
Well, there was a very credible sighting on my first show of a gal that said she saw him across from Lake McDonald in that burn there. We did an extensive recon in there too, and saw some huge tracks that were probably grizzly tracks, but it could have been something else.
And, me and my husband also seen some tracks, and I have pictures of them up in Chief Mountain.
Up in Chief Mountain? A view from on top of up in Chief Mountain.
And it was during the winter time, and so
you know, I have another witness that's seen tracks out in that country.
Yeah,
big ones.
Yeah, and my husband and me, we put our feet beside the prints, and I drew them out. And the funny thing is the tracks went into the trees, and then they were gone.
Wow. And then they were gone completely?
They were gone completely. I have pictures.
Does that indicate to you that maybe it's a multi-dimensional creature that possibly can go into a different dimension?
Yeah.
Wow.
Multi-dimensional. Yeah.
Well, God makes all kinds of things, and the Bible talks about cherubim and seraphim and winged creatures that we can't see that are in another dimension. So I have another testimony and a photograph on this exact show of a situation where someone took a picture and there was a Bigfoot in it, but nobody saw the Bigfoot while they were actually taking the picture. It's super close and it's really wild. So as Native people, Are there any legends in your lore about this, or?
Well, I've done some research because I've studied Bigfoot my own self and Sasquatch, and part of the legends is that when you see Bigfoot, Bigfoot is a messenger. So for the individual to see Bigfoot, there's a message for that individual to change something in their life, or if it's a group of people that see Bigfoot, maybe it's a meaning to change something in a community, or something needs to shift within the family or something.
Now, this particular witness that got this amazing picture that you've seen on this program, which people tell me it's the most amazing close-up photo of Sasquatch that anybody's ever seen. Her parents had been fighting, and it was a traumatic situation, and she saw Bigfoot in the mountains, and since then has seen him on 2 other occasions. And they're struggling with Lyme disease and stuff and feel like it's such an impactful visit.
Yeah. I can totally see that.
I will tell you that I have a good friend, and they run transoms in Bab. I asked them about Bigfoot sightings and whatnot. Now, her husband was a border patrol guy there for many years, a very credible guy. And I asked him, and he said, he was out snowmobiling in that general vicinity, which isn't far from Chief Mountain. I've climbed Chief Mountain, by the way, from the top. And it's a sacred place. But he said that when they were snowmobiling, they saw some really big tracks. And I asked if he'd tell about it, and he said, no, I'm shy to say something like that. I was a border patrol and everything. But there's been several sightings that would confirm this, as well as in my last program, John Calf-Looking told of a story that took place around Duck Lake. So any final words or thoughts?
Bigfoot exists.
Yeah, he does. He really does.
It's amazing.
Now, there's a disproportionate amount of people in my interviews are Native American. Do you think there's something special, some special connection between the Native people and Bigfoot?
So part of our folklore or our legends through our own storytellings, tribally, they go back to certain descriptions of beings that are from a different, from a spirit world. So for Bigfoot, he is one of those beings, and we acknowledge how different animals or birds or wildlife are messengers, and they represent something specific. And so does Bigfoot. So through our stories, through our legends, it goes back, generations. And so we know that there is this connection and existence of Bigfoot, and he is part of our culture.
Blowing my mind, because there seems to be some pretty credible testimony that Bigfoot could be a multi-dimensional creature that inhabits the physical world that we inhabit at times, but can morph and enter a different dimension that they could not be found. Catherine seemed to have a experience like that with the tracks.
Came upon some tracks, and these are human-looking tracks. They are Bigfoot tracks, and they were large enough to where the shoe size was, I don't even know, definitely bigger than man's, because my husband measured his foot towards the print. And these tracks went into the trees, walking into the trees, but it stopped right at the edge of the trees and the entry, and they were gone.
It wouldn't just be wiped out by wind, but
we looked, and it was just very defined tracks, and they were gone. I think even if it was wind that had interrupted that those steps, you probably would have still seen some kind of impression.
Yeah.
But they were just gone.
Well, thank you so much, Tabitha, for sharing your story, and Kathleen, we appreciate that. And who's this little gal?
This is my daughter, Micah.
Micah, hi.
Say hi.
And who's this one?
Nyla.
Nyla, and
Skylar. Well, nice to meet all of you. Well, I am here with Lainey and Renee. That's my lovely wife in the background. And they have some amazing stories and an incredible, possibly the most incredible photo of Bigfoot that I've ever seen. And Lainey is willing to talk some about it. You know, I was telling them that I feel like I have a special connection with the bear race. I have had a lot of quite intimate, very close experiences with grizzlies and black bear. And I think I've got a little bit of a juju going on with them. Maybe you'll see me eating after a while, but and prove me wrong, but no, I feel that way. And I feel like this woman has that same deal going on with the Bigfoot, and I'm just going to let her share her experiences.
I'm Renee, my daughter's Lainey. The first experience was when I was about 12, going from Telluride to Cortez over the pass. And my parents were actually fighting, so every time I tried to get their attention, oh my gosh, look at that, look at that. It was a very short amount of time because we were driving. And I saw this huge, like giant, I thought it was a giant man initially, going across the meadow, and it was kind of an upslope meadow in the snow, making huge, just big giant steps going through the snow up the side of the mountain. And,
about what month was it?
I would say it was probably about January, early February.
Midwinter.
Yeah, and then it was a beautiful morning. It was probably about 11 in the morning. The sun was bright. So there was no mistaking there was something there. And then it just seemed like after that I kept having, you know, all these interesting experiences. But I never knew really what it was attributed to until then, of course, I got the Lyme disease and then got sick, and me and the girls took a trip up the Pacific Coast Highway, got to North Sequoia.
Wait a minute, before we go on to that, so you saw this creature, and how big did it seem to be?
Oh my goodness, he was huge. Looking back, I would say he could have been maybe 9+ feet. He was very, very wide.
Wow,
oh,
9+
very dark.
feet.
Oh, he was huge. And it's hard because to tell because I was young then, but
yeah.
I just remember seeing a giant, and he was all, you know, it was all one color, really dark brown. And so I thought, maybe it's a man, you know. I don't know, but it doesn't make any sense why there would be a man there.
Did your parents happen to see it too?
No, they were not. I couldn't get them to
They
pay
were
any-
arguing.
They were arguing. They would not pay attention. Yeah.
Did the creature look towards you or just
no,
walk by?
just walking big steps.
Great big steps.
Big, huge
Wow,
steps and
that's
going
amazing.
up there. Yeah.
That's something else. And okay, go ahead and tell us the next experience around the Pacific Coast.
So we took that trip, and it was, you know, a really special trip. And so when we got to North Sequoia, it was evening, sun was setting, and the park was going under construction, and they were, you know, taking care of dead trees and things like that. And so it was pretty empty. We went in through the north entrance through the big, that big tree that has the tunnel carved out.
You know what? Just a second. That is the exact place that not far from that found this, what I thought could have been an amazing Sasquatch shelter. I don't know if you saw it in my first show, but it's pretty incredible. Now I can't say for sure, I'm not an expert, but it was a pretty incredible hollowed out tree with a bunch of trees on top. And I thought, wow.
It was me, Lainey, and of course Aiden wasn't born yet, and my youngest daughter, oh gosh, I think she was maybe 11-ish, 10 or 11 at the time. And we went through there, and it was so eerie and so quiet. And we were exhausted from driving.
From the big tree?
I would say it probably wasn't even a whole mile in.
Wow,
and
that's near where I found this enclosure.
Oh, that's cool. So Not even probably a mile in, we're talking about we need to switch, seats, driving. I was going to take over driving. She was exhausted. So we went in there and she pulled over, and I got to like this feeling like something's watching me from the edge, right? The tree line.
Yeah.
All you see is a dark tree line. That's it. Like a wall of trees and darkness. I was like, I feel like something's watching me, I was like so freaking, I was scared. And then I was like, I don't think we should get out here. We should go back to like a gas station and then switch there, because I felt very uncomfortable. And over to the side was a little meadow and a fence line. Now I'm not sure if there was like a forestry cabin or something, because there was an orange light, but I couldn't tell what it was. Out of nowhere, this giant thing just rushes right in front of us. And initially it was on all fours. It was so big, it just towered over the car. All we could see is the lower half and the feet.
Wow.
It was huge, and it just zoomed off to the left.
It was initially on all fours.
Yeah, it just rushed out of there on all fours. Is that that's what you saw, right? Yeah. And I was like, oh my God, what is that? Oh my God, we were like start screaming and panicking. Oh my God, it was so huge. The feet and the legs were just immense. And it seemed like it just got up. Once it only took like, boom, boom, and then it looked like it stood up and just vanished.
Wow.
Gone. Disappeared.
And how big around was the lake?
Oh my gosh. I don't even know. It was huge. It was just massive. How big do you think that was?
I can't even say for sure. It was massive.
How big would you just guess, like, put your hands out, would you guess how big around the lake was?
Yeah, similar to that.
Like huge.
Like ginormous.
It was like ginormous. Like the calves, just huge. And the feet.
You really only see like knees down, and then you just see like this faint silhouette of how tall it was.
What was your impression?
I was scared. I was a new driver. I was exhausted, and this thing just hopped across the road in like 2 steps. And
Wow, did it stand up at some point?
towards the end, when it did stand up, I would say it was probably, I don't know, what do you think, 8 feet? Maybe more?
Probably more.
8 feet taller.
Really big, huh?
I think it was just.
Wow.
I couldn't see the upper half, because all I saw was this. Imagine a giant grizzly bear.
But it
walking
wasn't
in front
just
of
a
your
bear,
small car.
it did
No.
at some point become erect.
You could see the feet.
You could see
it,
the
like,
feet,
It
huh?
was just like stomp.
It was just
Wow.
ginormous floppy feet.
Ginormous floppy
It
feet.
had like the hair going down the front, the top, and the knuckles,
Wow.
and you could just see, and you could see the pad like a human foot. And then, we freaked out. We got out of there. Like, I don't even know why we were so scared. It wasn't trying to harm us.
Yeah.
But just seeing something so massive, it scares you,
Were you scared
We're a
too?
bunch of
I was
dogs.
terrified. I was absolutely terrified.
My youngest.
Absolutely terrified.
My youngest
You know, any
daughter
of the
was
real
freaking.
authentic close encounters I've had, it was pretty terrifying to the people because just the sheer size of the creature. Wow.
It's a very, even though they're not trying to harm, any encounter I've ever had, they've never once tried to harm us. We have had some bad feelings in one specific area, and we just follow our instincts and leave. But now it's to the point where they just, it seems like, I don't know what the factor is in them sort of, I guess, tagging you, or if once you see them, that gives them a permission to then pursue you, like, I don't know, like a friend or something.
Well, there's a fascinating account at what's called the 8 Caves around Mount St. Helens, where they were damaged during the eruption, and there was some government officials that were even taking them out and stuff. And
one man was particularly kind to this one that had a scar along his face. And later that same Sasquatch appeared after they had got in like a rollover wreck, and it came to their aid and righted the vehicle. And that's the report that I heard. It's on YouTube. And I found it quite interesting that it felt as though if the human was receptive and kind and of a good spirit toward it, that they would reciprocate. In one of my shows, there was a young woman around Mount Shasta, and she was only like 7 or 8, and she saw one up on the hillside, and she was just looking at it in a friendly manner. And she said it waved at her. And she waved back, and then a bunch of Japanese tourists came in a bus and got out with her, and it just bounded up so quick. They didn't want nothing about that.
Even after the Sequoia Park incident, not a lot went on after that, but I became, it's weird, because once you see something like that, like you see them, you want to know more, so you keep investigating.
Sure.
It just like calls to you, you just become addicted, and then not a lot happened, but I started learning a lot about it. And then it seemed like not until we were staying up in Pennsylvania for a little bit, and then we had come back. Now I went back to my hometown, Grand Junction, Colorado, and there's a place, David Mountain or something. You go south of Grand Junction, and I don't want to give like deep details, but off in the country, more toward the west, we were driving back there. We were having some difficult times. We go out to nature, and I came across this place, and these structures were massive, huge. It was like a giant jungle gym, and they just built it across the whole dirt road, and it wasn't very well used. There's like a little camping area there. Not many people know about it, and I could not believe that was my first real structure experience. And so I filmed everything, and I took pictures, and that's when they started showing up in the pictures.
So tell me about this fascinating picture. That's like one of the most realistic, amazing facial pictures of a Bigfoot I've ever seen in my life.
Now, I'm nervous because I haven't showed this to people, and the two people that I did show it to, if I talk about this, people instantly are like, oh my God, you're crazy. So I haven't shared it with very many people, but let me see. Let me find it real quick. I would say last year.
The Native American people felt sometimes that they would have special experiences that would actually take them and become a part of their Native American name. And I felt like I kind of had one of those experiences in Glacier Park on April 30th. I was tucked coming down, going to the Sun Road, and I almost ran into this giant grizzly bear. 7 feet away, I noticed him, and he noticed me, and I almost ran into him. And he just looked at me and goes, "Ugh!" And then he bounds into the woods. Now, I know of a couple of people that have died in that situation, and for me to be that close to that amazing animal, I kind of felt a special kind of experience in that has kind of taken me, and I'm kind of getting the vibe that this gal here has that kind of thing going on with the Bigfoot. Okay guys, a couple of things here. Number one, I know some of you probably fast forwarded it to this part so you could see the pictures, but don't skip the rest of the video, because this is some of the best eyewitness reports I've ever got in my life. And it's not he said, she said, or I knew somebody. It's, man, I saw this with my eyes. Let me tell you what it is. And number two, if my hourly rate were calculated on my YouTube channel, I'd probably be making about 15 cents an hour. And many times when I do come up with something earth-shattering, other people plagiarize it and they make the money. Other people plagiarize it and they make the big money off my discovery. So I did put a little C. James Willows YouTube on this picture because Renee gave me the rights to share this, and I don't want 150 people just taking it viral with their own downloading of it. If you're watching, Renee, that's in no way to say that I feel this is my stuff and not yours. Not at all.
I'd just like you to talk and show a little bit about that amazing picture that you showed me.
Okay, so apparently they can get in the trees, and it looks like he was sleeping in the tree and that we were loud and woke him up.
Yes.
So this is kind of the beginning where he's coming out of the tree. It's really odd. And then, let me just change it.
Yeah.
So here's that.
Wow. And there he is actually looking at you direct. And that to me is so amazing, because you could have a Hollywood makeup crew spend a month and they couldn't come up with something so authentic. And I've seen hokey Bigfoot suit stuff on YouTube, but that is an incredible, incredible photo. Where was this at?
North Colorado.
North Colorado. Wow. Look at that substantial nose and the eyes and the hair. It's just, to me, it's so authentic.
And there he is behind my brother.
Now, what was your brother doing?
We're just roaming around the woods, exploring. They were just standing there. Well, we were kind of walking, just talking and stop and talk. And
what's this here?
That's his ear.
That's your brother's ear?
Yeah.
That looks pretty close. How far away was it?
I would say that, I don't know, probably about maybe 10 feet behind us.
10 feet behind you?
I would say anywhere from 5 to 10 feet.
Oh
But,
my gosh, look how close he is.
Yeah, and then, while we were there, I didn't see anything while I was like right in front of it. No, none of us did. We were just walking, stop and talk.
You didn't even see the creature there at the time, but later it appeared in the pictures?
When I went back looking at my pictures,
oh my
it was there.
gosh, that
Yeah.
is so... So that's giving her the impression that they could almost be interdimensional creatures, because she's had other experiences where it seems like they're there and then they're not, kind of like Flash Gordon or something.
Yes. There's no reason why we shouldn't have seen it if we're right in front of it.
Yeah.
And that, like many of the other pictures that I have, sometimes something may look funny, but you can't really tell they're there. And then later I will go back and look at the picture, and then I'll see them where we were, and I'm just like, oh my gosh.
This is kind of blowing my mind, because that is like a super clear picture that even a computer expert would have a hard time ever getting something so authentic. And yet it was that close to you and you didn't realize it at the time. Did you sense something might be near at the time, or nothing?
No, not that time. A lot of times we can sense something, but this time there was nothing. And my brother's, he does a lot of his own investigations and stuff. He's seen a lot of them too. He used to work with forestry, and he actually worked in the fire towers near the Dulce base. And so he was a fire watch up there, so he had seen a lot of things in that area.
He's been quite interested in this.
Oh yes, yeah.
So what's your thoughts after the incident? Like, that's an incredible picture. I think that's possibly the most incredible Bigfoot photograph I've ever seen.
It's shocking. It's shocking.
When it just appeared up on your phone, you took it on a phone?
I did. I usually record everywhere we go, just because now I know that they could be there and we won't even know it. And then there's a possibility that they'll show themselves later, or maybe not. For the most part, they've been showing themselves that way for maybe a year.
You had experiences where you actually could see them and then they disappear into another dimension?
We have not, other than in Sequoia National Park where it went across the road and then it just vanished. I think that was one of the only major times that we've seen them. That one just vanished like in thin air. Other than that, we have, like, I showed you one picture a few minutes ago where it looked like it was popping its head out of like a bell or like a curtain or something. So it seems like there's quite a bit of that. It's hard to get like the whole body. And I don't know if they're shy or I would be scared of humans too if I were them, because humans are just not nice.
It's like we talked about earlier, that sometimes you've gone through a lot, Your parents fighting in the initial one, going through Lyme disease, that's got to be a real trial.
Yes.
And yet at different times, has it comforted you or caused you to feel relieved at times?
At first I was really scared. I was terrified in the beginning. And now I feel like, I feel some sort of relief, because I know when people are telling me, like doctors and whatever, saying, oh, it's impossible, you're never going to be cured, keeping everything so level to like this reality, it makes me feel really comforted knowing that there's things there, that there's all those possibilities. And I know that what I've seen, anything is possible. So anything anybody tells me in this reality, I'm going to ask questions and question everything.
Elaine, what's your synopsis on all of this?
It's kind of like everything she said, just bring light. It's not scary anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes with the loud noises and the loud things and stuff, it can make you jump, but I don't think they're bad at all. I think.
But imposing still. Interesting. I'm a Christian man. I believe in the Bible and the Word of God. And some people that are my Christian friends say, man, what are you doing researching this? But others find it very interesting. In fact, I was invited to the Stillwater Christian School to speak about these things because my friend, the teacher there, his perspective is God is so multifaceted and creative. And to think that he even created these amazing beings that haven't really been totally discovered, just so that we can probe and investigate and find out about them. It's really another dimension of the beauty and majesty of God himself. You read in the Bible and there's seraphim and cherubim and all these wild creatures up there that are praising Yahweh. So to believe in the Bigfoot is, in my mindset, not at all antithetical to having a Christian perception or a worldview like that, but it's just the majesty and wonder of God. What's your last statement?
There's many things that we don't know about. Don't let fear control you, for sure.
Don't let fear control you. Yeah. Well, Renee, I know that a lot of people are going to really enjoy this, and you're going to bring enlightenment and interest in the subject to a lot of people. So I really want to thank you for sharing.
I appreciate talking to you. I haven't shared it with a lot of people, and it feels good to kind of just, I want to show people, like, this is real.
Yeah.
This is really happening. So people need to know. The only way we're going to do that is really share it,
Because there's people that have kind of devoted their life, like PhD Jeff Meldrum over in Idaho at the university. He's kind of devoted his life to this. And so you've brought a big segment of revelation to us.
And I think it has a lot to do with higher consciousness, frequency, vibration. I believe that they can read all those things about us. And I feel like not everybody is really vibrating at the right frequency in order to make contact. So I think maybe it has something to do with that and vulnerability. I'm not an expert. I don't know. I just know what I've been through.
Well, once again, thank you so much. I better go help these girls out a little. A couple of times since she shared that a few moments ago, I've had chills and goosebumps, and it's just pretty amazing to see that photo. It looks something like the best CGI team of the Lord of the Rings genre or something could put together, but I know it wasn't. I know it was just a photo, so it's kind of blowing my mind still right now. Even in the aftermath of seeing that picture, I've gotten goosebumps and chills a couple of times because to me it looks so authentic, like the best work that a Lord of the Rings CGI team could possibly ever do. And yet I'm pretty sure that she, as a gal just struggling with Lyme disease, probably didn't or doesn't have the resources to create such a creation. So I'm still just saying, wow.
So this is one of my huckleberry pickers named Dalton, and he had a Bigfoot story too.
Well, we were all up Pinkham Creek up in Eureka. We were doing a logging job up there.
He's a Eureka boy.
Yeah, we were doing a logging job up there, and it was probably, I don't know, 3:30, 4:30 in the afternoon. We were coming down from the landing, and we came around a corner, and something went across the road, man. And I mean, I'm telling you, there was 4 of us in a logging pickup, and a crew cab logging pickup, and we all 4 looked at it, and we know it was not a bear. We know it was not a wolf. We know that it was running on 2 legs, and when it got to the other side of the road, it jumped across the ditch and ran up that hill, and by the time we got down there was nothing to see.
Wow, how big did it appear?
You know, from the road distance, I mean, it was big. It was probably 7 foot tall, somewhere in there, you know. I mean, it was pretty big, and you could tell that it wasn't running on all 4s when it ran across that road. It was running on 2 legs, and by the time it got to the end of the road, the other side, it jumped across that ditch and up that bank it went. I mean, we were only less than, 3 minutes, maybe 4 minutes up the road from it, just coming down the road, and by the time we got there, it was completely gone. And I mean, we didn't see any tracks or anything like that, but we know what we seen, and it sure.
Did you happen to look for tracks?
We did. We stopped and we looked a little ways. We didn't see really any tracks. But it was all really dry, it was probably August, really August, and it was really dry, and in fact, I remember it was right before Hot August Nights in Libby, so that would have been the end of August.
Wow, so
yeah.
How far up Pinkham Creek were you?
We were all the way at the very top, right before you drop into Fort Tyne and Trigo, so Edna Creek area.
Edna Creek area. And did it appear to have long hair, or was the hair shortish, or?
It probably had shorter hair. I didn't see it was long and bushy. All I could tell is it was big and black, and it did not run on all 4s. And I've been.
So it was black, huh?
Yeah, it was black haired, and I mean, it looked. At first, we thought it was a bear. We did. Yeah. I mean, we've been in the woods. I've been in the woods my entire life. I've been logging since I was a kid. I know what animals are out there, and it was not anything that we have ever seen before. And it literally blew all of our minds, and we still talk about it to this day.
Isn't that something? Now, how much would you reckon it weighed?
Oh, it probably had to weigh over 500 pounds.
It was pretty massive.
It was big, area. Yeah. I mean, it definitely. I mean, if I was standing next to it, I'm sure it was a lot taller than me, because I mean, we were probably 3/4 of a mile or a half a mile down the road from when we first came around the corner, and we seen it run across the road. And by the time we got up to it, like I said, we didn't get a chance to really get a good look at it, but from a distance, I mean, it was definitely taller than a pickup.
But all 4 of you saw it, huh?
All 4 of us seen it.
What outfit were you working for at that time?
I was working for my family, me and myself and I. We were working for Stacy Logging.
Oh, okay.
Stacy Trucking out of Eureka, Montana.
I just got a testimony from the far west, in the very most northern and westerly section of Washington, and the lady saw 2 of them and said that they were mossy colored, just like moss, but yours was just perfectly black, huh?
Yeah, like black, I mean, I think wow. I think a lot of it has to do with being just like a bear. Bears aren't always the same color.
Yeah. Interesting. Any other thing you might like to say about it?
All I know is keep your eyes open and expect the unexpected. How's that?
Yeah.
Because we spend a lot of time in the woods, especially myself, and I've spent a lot of nights out there on my own, and I know for a fact that it wasn't a bear, and it was it was weird, man. It was weird. We almost thought it was a man in a ghillie suit at first.
Yeah, but you ruled that possibility out?
We did, because I mean, we're all the way on top of a mountain, and I just can't see anybody going up there to mess with us when we're just up there working,
Yeah, way out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, we're just up there working, I mean, we never had a problem since then. We never had a problem after, so I mean.
Did you catch any odor or anything like that?
No, nothing like that. Like I said, we just came around the corner and we just happened to see something run across the road, and we definitely knew at first it wasn't a bear when we were trying to get a good look at it. But I mean, it's quick. It was quick. It ran across the road and up the hill, and by the time we got there, it was gone. So
Did it run pretty fluidly?
yeah. I mean, I would say four steps. It was across the road, and then it hopped up the bank, because I mean, up there in Eureka, the banks are pretty steep,
Yeah.
So it hopped up the bank, and away it went, man.
Now, I used to not believe in it because I've been in the woods a ton. I've hiked at least 4,000 miles, hunting, cross-country skiing, trapping, doing my thing, huckleberry picking, and I've never seen one. But I did have a very unique experience I tell about on my first one, where some giant rocks were heaved into the water. But my feeling is that they're kind of rare. I don't think there's a lot of them around, because I've been all over this state and I've never seen one. And you've been in the woods, and I know you huckleberry pick constantly, and that's the only one you ever saw, huh?
Yeah, that's the only one I've ever seen. In fact, I'll be honest with you, I've lived in the woods my entire life, and I've never seen a bobcat. I've lived in the woods my entire life, and I've only seen one grizzly bear. Wow. I've seen a lot of black bears, but I've only seen one grizzly bear.
I happen to know my buddy Dalton here has not only worked in the woods, but lived in the woods for much of his life. And he hasn't hardly ever seen a species we know exists, like grizzly bear. Well, last summer was a terrible huckleberry crop. I had bears desperately coming after my pickers last summer, so I was having mercy on a mama bear and her 2 cubs, and I was feeding them on my little 1 1/3 acre, which is on the river. My son had made a boxing bag out of a tree by wrapping it with the foam that our cones come in. And the bears ripped up the boxing tree because of the nice smell upon the foam. And the bears were eating the food that I was regularly putting out. And yet in that 2 weeks when they were almost living on my 1 1/3 acre, I never saw them. Well, I'm going out to feed the pet bears. The bear was tearing up my boxing tree some more. It must be because these foams come out of the waffle cones. So with only 1 acre of land and 3 bears that have been on here almost every single day, and granted, I keep it kind of thick over there to purposely provide some habitat for wildlife, yet I have never seen these 3 bears, and I know that they've been on my property almost every day or every other day. So, tell them what you saw, Chris.
What, a couple mom and 2 cubs running off of your property yesterday or this morning?
Nice.
Yeah, they must have.
They're my pet bears. I'm about to put up a beware of bear sign on my front gate. Neighbors saw them, but I didn't. I have been through regions of southern Oregon that were so remote they had to have emergency phones every 15 miles because there was no possible way your cell phone was going to work. So don't tell me that in the vast regions of untamed Oregon, California, Washington, Montana, Idaho, British Columbia, Yukon, and Alaskan wildernesses, there are not things that you don't know about living right in among you. Don't tell me it's not real just because you personally haven't seen it. It's even worked its way into popular literature. Here is a segment of Jack London's Call of the Wild in which Buck is actually hanging out with a Sasquatch.
Wow. I've seen a lot of black bears, but I've only seen 1 grizzly bear.
Now, I got you beat by far there. I've seen a lynx and I've seen a ton of grizzly bear, and I've been charged by a grizzly bear. And everything.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that has to do with, because when I'm in the mountains, I'm usually working. So, I mean, there's loud equipment going on, or I got my speaker going, or whatever. So I'm usually being loud, to keep things away from me.
Yeah.
But just, happened to be that one time in my life I seen something that I just cannot explain. And
how many years ago?
This would have been when I was probably 20, 23, 24. I'm 30 now, so.
Wow, well, we sure appreciate that story, and I believe it's true.
Yeah, not a problem. I'm glad to share the story with you.
Are like a lot of people that they're reluctant to tell at first because they think that people are going to think they're crazy. But I told them and affirmed that there's been a number of sightings in Utah, so we're going to let, what's your name? Emily share her story.
So my mother and I were spending some time up Big Cottonwood Canyon in the Wasatch Mountain Range in Salt Lake City, Utah. This was a few summers ago, 2013, 14-ish. And we were just enjoying the deck, and we were sitting on the north side of the canyon and looking across the canyon to the ski slope on the other side. And I was just sitting there enjoying the sun when I look up and look at the ski slope across from me, and this was some good distance away, and saw an extremely large, dark, tall figure run across the ski slope. I saw it, and then I looked at my mom and I asked her if she had saw it, and right when I looked at her to ask her if she had saw it, she looked at me to see if I had saw it. So we both saw it, and we both agreed immediately that it was not a bear, it was not a moose. We were astounded at what we saw. We couldn't figure it out. We both absolutely agreed that it was upright, and it moved very, very fast. And for the distance that we were away from it, it was very large.
Were you about a quarter mile away, or closer?
I think say more. Oh yeah, probably a mile. Good
but
mile.
You could really
we
see
could
it.
See
absolutely
it was that
huge.
immense from as far away as we were.
Wow. Yeah. Well, you'll see in the other footage that people have taken in Utah that they're big,
they're
like 8
huge.
or 9 feet tall.
Exactly.
At least.
It had to be. That's why we know that it was nothing that we had ever seen before.
we were honestly dumbfounded, and we said to each other, because we're from Maine, we know black bear when we see black bear, we know moose when we see a moose. Yeah. And we said, this is not black bear or moose.
Correct.
It definitely looked like it was upright, and the speed that it moved at was.
I think the most important thing was that Emmy saw something and I saw something, and we both just looked at each other at the same time, not saying, "Oh, look, Mom," and then me glancing over because she told me to see it. We both saw it independently of each other.
Wow. And we're both surprised. We both looked at each other and surprised.
Do you think what we just saw is that,
was that Bigfoot? Was that a Sasquatch? I said.
Right. And then we go, well, we're not going to tell anybody ever again that we saw that, because they'll call us crazy. And we haven't. We don't talk about it.
Yeah. You don't talk about it. But you'll see that there's a lot of people that have had sightings, and it's a real thing. I'm 99% sure, although I've never had a sighting, I'm 99% sure that this is a real thing, because I've had some extremely credible people.
Absolutely.
Like this guy that begins my second documentary. I've found since then that he's a solid Christian man. His daughter was going to work for me, and he wouldn't be just making stuff up.
No, exactly.
It's not us.
So what happened with your father?
Oh, so my dad, he's the one to tell this story. But my dad is retired law enforcement of Maine State Police, Chief of Police, Colonel. And so he's a man that does not make up stories either. He's not going to just, but he was up in the northern woods of Maine, up in the Allagash Wilderness Waterway. He was out fishing in a very remote area with a buddy of his. And he said he did hear an extremely large splash. Very large splash. They didn't know what it was. They didn't think anything of it really until they started walking back out of their fishing spot, and he came across a footprint in the mud. He said that there is no humanly way possible that a normal human being, Homo sapien, had a footprint that large. He said it was easily, I don't even know what that is, a 2 foot long footprint. Wow. He didn't get a picture, of course. That was the first thing I asked him. Dad, wasn't thinking he was up there, but he actually is going to be sharing his story with a woman who's writing a book and making a documentary about weird stories from Maine. And he's going to be sharing his story firsthand with this person. I don't know her name, but he definitely saw something as well.
Yeah.
Although I've never actually seen a Bigfoot, I was canoeing in a very remote section of the Flathead River, and we pulled into this little island, and it was the creepiest thing because we just both had a feeling like we were being watched, and neither of us could sleep. And then all of a sudden there was a ginormous splash, and then another. And to this day, I don't know what it could have been, but I've been told and heard from others that when they feel threatened, they throw large boulders and it causes splashes.
So my name is Stacy and I'm from Utah, and once I was hiking up in the Uintas, and there was a rock that came down behind me as I was walking on the trail, and I thought it was being rolled down, because that's just what you think. It's like, how did this rock come out of nowhere. And as I was walking, more rocks were coming down, but I realized they were actually being thrown, not rolled. And I looked up, and it was really, really thick vegetation, and I really couldn't see what was up there. But every time I would stop and look at the rocks, nothing would happen. But then as I would turn and walk, more rocks would come down and fall behind me. So to me, that was just like really odd and really strange. And I really think that's when I became a believer, when that happened.
We were in the woods. He was backing up. I was looking down at my phone, and when I looked up, Sasquatch walked between two trees, like one step, and looked me right in my eyeballs. And I've seen one other time across here, running.
You saw him across on Columbia Mountain?
Across Huckland in the woods.
You're kidding! You saw Sasquatch across from Huckland in the woods.
It sounds crazy. I sound crazy.
That's amazing. And it wasn't the statue I got here, but you saw it.
He was very tall, but the hair was more sleek and not as furry on his head. But his eyeballs were like a man.
Isn't that something? How big? How big the Huckland time?
Same, like probably a foot taller than him.
About a foot taller than him. Yeah, and what is he? 6'1"?
6'1". When he walked through the trees, it just like was one step gone, but he looked right at me.
Looked right. What color was his eyes?
I don't know.
You
It
couldn't really
just reminded me of a man. Like,
wow,
freaked me out.
Now, where was that at?
It was up across from the dewdrop, back in those woods.
Wow, only right across from the dewdrop.
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing.
I wouldn't get out.
There's a lot of elk back in there, that Blankenship area. I've seen a lot of elk and stuff around in there.
Almost hit a
Yeah, we've already seen 6 bears this year.
Have you really? What was the scariest experience?
The 2 fighting behind us, behind our vehicle.
2 were fighting?
Yes, they sound like dirt bikes or cross rockets going off or something. It was weird.
Wow.
But then we turned around and they were taking off.
That's amazing. You saw Sasquatch twice and once right in those woods across from Huckland?
Running.
She did. I didn't ever see him.
Isn't that something? Well, there's a lot of deer around there.
No.
And
no. I was born and raised. I was not a believer in Sasquatch. I thought it was hilarious. But when he looked me in my eyeballs, that's it. Like,
that's something.
And it's tall like a man. Like, he stands very tall, and he walked, but big long arms.
Big long arms.
Yeah. He did. See, I don't know. Maybe it was a girl.
Wow, that is something, Christine. Thanks for sharing your story.
You're welcome.
This is my wife, Mary, and she's still not convinced that Sasquatch is real, even though I've interviewed 27 now that say they've seen him. But I want Christine to tell her about seeing him right in across the woods.
Well, the only reason I think it was him across the woods is because I seen him the first time. Because it was darker, it was like dusk time, and he was running. But, like, the stride and the hairiness, he's real, I swear. I didn't believe it. I thought people were crazy.
Now, do you believe her?
I don't know.
I did, but my reaction was genuine because, when you're startled, you don't think about your acting, you just do.
I wonder if my statue drew him in like a decoy. Especially in the night, I've got it lit up. Man, if you were a Bigfoot and you didn't have many women around, where would you go but Huckland?
I think your statue makes him look too primitive, like a monkey, like a gorilla or something, but he stood tall, like very straight posture. Like a man. He walked like a man.
Wow, I like that walk. Now, Christine said he really looked more like a man than most people depict Bigfoot, and we said, well, are you sure it wasn't a man? Because he said, there's some hairy men out there. And she said, no, because how many hairy men are 7 feet tall and stride around naked in the woods?
Yeah, I mean, deep woods. We weren't like just off the highway or off a road, like we were deep in the woods.
Yeah.
And I was just looking at my phone while he was backing up, and I just happened to look up at the perfect time, And he stepped between two trees and he looked right at me.
Wow, isn't that something? But it scared the tar out of you, huh?
Yeah, because he made eye contact with me.
Wow.
Like he knew I seen him, and I don't think that's allowed.
Wow, isn't that something? The real pickers often just use four-wheelers to get up there and do their deal. Have a good day. You too. Hey everybody, I'm here with John, who was with his grandpa and grandma when they all saw some really big Bigfoot tracks.
Yeah, it was like when I was 5-ish, and it's in Central Cal, up in the foothills towards Jamestown. My grandpa, he worked for Amory's Turkey Ranch. Growing up, we lived with him for a while. It was just my grandma, my grandfather and I, and a bunch of turkeys on this farm that's a mile away from the road. And one morning we got up and we were going to check the turkeys. We were walking. It was just 3 of us up there.
Yeah.
And right then, in the middle of the road, there was a partial print in the first bit, and it's like, and there was toe prints. And then on the other side of the grass, in the middle of the dirt, was a footprint. My grandfather, he stood 6'3", and he's skinny as a rail, and he tried to mimic the step, and it was like he was jumping just to get to the next step. I mean,
so that had to be like 9 feet apart, 8 feet apart?
Something like that.
Plenty far.
Yeah, but I still remember to this day, and it's been over 55 years, and I remember the track. It was just in the dirt, and this is a dirt, it's midsummer-ish, and it's just flaky and powdery, and there's the track. And at the time I didn't think anything about it, but over the years it's always been, well, I saw a Bigfoot track and didn't make, it was like, wow, and now it's like a big thing. Back then it was just, okay, I was 5. I didn't know what the heck was going on.
Yeah, so about how big would you reckon that it was? Could you put your hands out and to kind of give us some estimation?
About 16 inches, 18 inches.
16 or 18 inches, plenty big. Now my obvious question is, was there any turkey missing? It seems like that would be a prime Squatch bait.
I don't remember, but there was always dead turkeys around because of the coyotes.
I really appreciate you sharing your story. Is there any final anecdote you'd like to share about it?
Bigfoot's real, and he's alive.
Now, you may remember from my part 1 Bigfoot documentary that Alexandra Mesa saw a Bigfoot, what she believed was a Bigfoot, only hours after the park reopened after it was closed for so long. Well, she's got married and got a lovely child now. And what's your thoughts after 2 years, Alexandra?
I'm still kind of in disbelief. I am excited to get back to the park and see if, by any chance I can get another sighting and just confirm with everyone what I did see that day.
Yeah, so part of your mind is saying, man, did I really see that or what? But part
Yeah,
of you is saying,
part of me-
I know it's got to be.
Yeah, I know what I saw. I remember it clearly. But then still part of me, I guess like the logic part of me that doesn't want to believe makes me think, well, what was it? What else could it be? And then as much logic as I try to apply to it, it's just nothing else makes sense besides Bigfoot. So I'm a believer.
Perfect. Everybody, hey, how do you like my new shirt? Safety third. That's kind of the way I look at it when I'm out doing some of these expeditions. Anyway, one of the most credible that I felt was just a guy I've gotten to know and become friends on Facebook, and just feel like he's really a solid, credible guy. From the last show, he had a little bit of additional activity in their area.
Yeah, like James knows, I live in Nebraska, and usually you don't think of Bigfoot there, but we did have some knocks on my brother's house, and we pretty sure it was probably that because it just shook the wall. And this is a sturdy farmhouse built in early 1900s, very, very well made, and it just shook everything. Yeah,
Isn't that something?
things don't come up to the house and knock on them.
I know for the first show you had mentioned that already, but it came back and shook it again.
It did.
How does he feel, or how did he react to all this?
Oh, the dog barked. I mean, he has a dog in the house. He lives alone. So,
the dog's at the house.
He just figured that's what it was.
Is he a little bit scared?
Not really.
Not really.
No, he doesn't get scared of much.
He's a Nebraska farmer with a shotgun.
Yeah. Right.
When I just told Bruce he was one of the most credible witnesses I've ever interviewed, he said, it's easy to be credible when you saw him with your own eyes.
Well, if you look it up on YouTube, when Mount St. Helens blew up, there was a team of Army National Guard members that came in, and they were to clean up the Bigfoot bodies. And that is what their job was. And they had cleaned up Bigfoot bodies. And one man talked about a patrol that he had went on, and he was working for the National Guard at the time. And he said that in his video, he talks about this man who showed up, and they went into this tent, in this army tent, and when he came out, there was a Sasquatch with him. This man was talking to this Sasquatch in a language that nobody could understand.
And the man was a human?
The man was a human. He worked for the Department of Arms or whatever.
I watched that show, and there was one guy that had kind of a special encounter, and he was especially kind to this Sasquatch that had a big scar on his face. And there was another key time where that guy got in a wreck or something, I can't remember exactly, and that same Sasquatch with the scar came and delivered him. I can't remember if he turned the Jeep over so they could get going, or pulled it off of him. Do you remember something about that?
I do remember that. Yes, I do remember that. He pulled him out of the car.
And I think they call them the ape caves, where there's caves over there that the Sasquatch were living in.
Yes, and they say that they went into a cave. The story is that after they put the Sasquatch in this Jeep, and all of them took off in this Humvee or Jeep or whatever it was, and they went into the mountains, and they went in there past a locked gate, went in there way far, and when they got there, some men went into the cave with the Sasquatch. When the Sasquatch came back out, and when the men came back out, they were carrying half-burned bodies and dead Sasquatches. And they supposedly they had a mound of dead Sasquatches and a mound of dead elk and a mound of dead deer, and every one of them got taken out by a Huey helicopter.
Wow. Well, my buddy Vern, my milkman, he had an experience where his brother around Mount St. Helens was in jail for something, a DUI I think it was, and this guy got put in jail next to him for poaching elk, and the guy was screaming, I saw a Sasquatch, it was terrifying, I saw the Sasquatch, it's real. And this game warden came and said, buddy, you'd better shut up or you're gonna disappear.
Well, I went to California, seen the sunset Frisco Bay. I've been down to Miami on a warm December day. And with all those million people, New York still leaves me alone. But this lady called Montana, she keeps calling me back home. Oh, oh, oh. So let me tell you of this feeling, words just can't explain. She's a sterling silver lady with gold dust in her veins. And don't you ever come around her if you don't plan to stay. 'Cause this lady called Montana, oh, she'll steal your heart away. Steal your heart